Hello, good morning and welcome to your most authoritative news analysis platform. This is Newsfile. This morning on your show, there's a girl. We're trying to figure out how old she is. But does it matter whether she's 12, 13, 15, 16? Does it matter? For as long as she's not 18, that a 63-year-old man, a priest, will take her. Is it betrothal? Is it marriage? Does it matter either way? There have been statements upon statements, a dozen of them, including from the Attorney General's department, from the Information Ministry, from NGOs, from legal entities, including FIDA, and they are all singing one song. She must be freed from the prison she's being put into. And some insist that the priest must be prosecuted. But is he being betrothed to the man or to a spirit? Does it matter either way? Stay tuned in. We will take you through the law and what the states ought to do by the dictates of the law. Then we go to a secretariat. There's a bonanza going on there. As we understand, it is not a scholarship secretariat. It is a place or a secretariat of greed and racketeering, criminal conduct, pure and simple. Well, people in the scholarship secretariat will also explain to us how come, even though the law dictates that the scholarships ought to be given to a certain class of people, they end up doling them out to the rich and privileged in society, politically connected. We'll hear their side of the story. I'm Samson, Lardy, Anyenini. We'll be right back to deal with the vexed matters. You're welcome back. This is Newsfile. It's your most authoritative news analysis platform, and here on Newsfile we put Ghana first. And here is my very brief take, Samson's take. I title it, Let's Insist on Right and Law. Let's insist on what is right and what is lawful. So, if I did a quick cocktail of Samson's takes about those things that make a good society, I would discover that I have written and spoken about police conduct in impounding cars. For most of our traffic offenses, contrary to law, absolutely lawless conduct. They have been acting in the most unlawful manner, sometimes misguided and ill-advised by their superiors. And we tolerate them. We don't have to. They are there because we want them to be there. We pay them to do that job. And they are established by law, so they must act in accordance with law. The only time they are allowed by law to impound your vehicle by the dictates of the law, and I've done that a number of times here on this show, is when you have parked the vehicle on the road. And the law dictates a period for about an hour, depending on the area, cosmopolitan or municipal or rural, for about 2 hours without notice to the police that a vehicle has been parked for that long. That is the only time that this law, the Road Traffic Act, requires that, empowers them to impound your vehicle. Not when they say, show me your license, and you can't produce it. Then the first thing they do is, we take your vehicle from you. And we know that for most of the times, they do this just to extort money from you. Now, let's hope that it stops. As the state's chief legal advisor and lawyer for the police, the Attorney General is the lawyer for the police. The Attorney General has ordered an end to this impunity. They ask for your license. You may have taken a screenshot and you are showing them. Dear police officer, all you need is the information and not the paper or the document itself. And in any case, the law's requirement is that you can give them between 42 hours to produce it. So what's your problem? You have no discretion in what the law says you should do. Now the Attorney General says, stop this ploy that you use to extort money. Let's hope that you get to stop. I recall the same people who accused me of overly extolling this IGP when he started on the note that he started. And they said, I may have been compromised by him. And that's why I was doing the things I was doing for how he was going about cracking the whip. These same people tend to ask if I had anything against the IGP, criticizing him for supervising this kind of lawlessness. Thankfully, this ends now. We have law that stipulates, specifies in great detail what must be done to earth-moving machines, excavators, found to be used in galamsey operations. The law's common sense instructions, the law's commonsensical instructions are that these excavators, when they are seized, they must be placed in the custody of the police in the place where they are found. And then later, after prosecution, they must be distributed to state institutions that have need for such expensive machines. And there must be a publicity to account for the distribution, who got what. Many districts, like mine, will be so happy to get such machines for much needed work. They can use them to pave their roads and all those. This government has violated this law with such impunity by setting excavators ablaze and defended the illegal conduct. The Vice President, Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia, has just announced there will be no more burning of excavators. Guess what? He's only telling you what the law says. The excavators in the first place must not end up on galamsey sites because there is yet another law that requires people to make payments to the Minerals Commission. And they are supposed to fit equipment to these excavators to trail them. So wherever every excavator is, they ought to know. And they pay this money, and yet they are not doing this job. And we decide to burn the excavators in the most unlawful way. I'm waiting to hear who in the NPP, including those who ought to know better, will attack and insult him, Dr. Bawumia, the same way they did to me for simply insisting on compliance with the law. I may have been first to introduce you to the details of the cybersecurity law. It punishes for sextortion. It punishes if you have intimate relations with your partner and you take footages and decide to put them out without their permission. In fact, the first time I spoke about it, this was the title I gave it: Nudity. Get foolish. Get 25 years in jail. You have seen many of our youth and bloggers showing nudity Please, we didn't pass the law as a piece of decoration. Let's use this law. It doesn't matter whatever wrong a woman may have done or a man may have done in taking videos or pictures of their own private encounters. The law says if you publish that, you, the one who published it, you will go to jail. You will rot in jail for that conduct. Let's be minded and let's stop the lawless conduct. It doesn't stop until and unless we insist on the right things. I'm Samson, Lardy, Anyenini. I get to the vex matters right away.
In this video, a group of women dressed in white can be seen carrying various items for the ceremony as they walk towards the Bobu Wulomos shrine. More than 10 men are also seen wearing white, accompanying the 12-year-old girl to the ground. A voice can be heard shouting, "This is tear robber, this is tear robber," a term suggesting the 12-year-old is a virgin. She continues as other voices join in as they say the old man really has a good sight. At the ceremonial ground, scores of people, all wearing white, are seen seated for the main event. The MC lists the items brought to the girl. The MC is then heard saying the 63-year-old man loves to play romance and will be engaged in romance today. And that, quote, he will use the girl as a wonderful instrument for enjoyment, unquote. She goes ahead to mention the number of drinks they have brought for the ceremony.
You are a wonderful instrument for enjoyment.
The MC is heard again saying every woman has to smell good at night. They brought perfumes that the 12-year-old can apply at night after wearing her see-through dress.
Here was snap, one here was red label, one here was green label, one here was blue label, one here was yellow label. Which I can see a face about the label here. Let me show me I can be here. One very brave Makusu, and I want 1 year, one flotto. Ni telemai mi opo ni wakaba. Jeno bekake. I have one leake away to a man's heart through his stomach. Kotono wuhia meshia. Tano honi ohale. Neye katope. Emabo mweni kaka habo shishini. Wahia wanibi baba ni baka ko wo see through eta. Nimi chomiaka obashio woe. Koko e pataniye. Alo numwe numo banake. Ngako mfaka njaheko.
And if you understand God, the very last words of the MC is what the Gandangbe group are now blaming for the euphoria. Because the very last words of the MC clearly indicates that she was going to be the subject of sexual encounters. Joining us this morning to help understand what is said to be betrothal. That's such a lavish, massive ceremony. People cannot reconcile that with anything than marriage. And is it the case that this was the time when she was 12 and now the Mankralu in an interview says she's 13, then we hear information again that she's 15 or that she turns 16 in July, and then we hear that she's 16. Does any of that matter? You've also heard the traditional leaders give a press conference and say that she is not being betrothed to the man, the priest, who is said to be 63 years old, but she's being given or betrothed to the spirit. Does that also matter? Joining us, very competent women to help us with this discussion. Professionals, women professionals. Dinah Sunabadapa is Deputy Attorney General and Deputy Minister for Justice. In the course of the week, you read a statement under her hand, very unequivocal, about the police needing to investigate the matter to the bottom and taking the right actions. And if the police need the help of their lawyer, the Attorney General, they should not hesitate to contact them. Also here in the studio, Dr. Angela Dwamina Abuaji is Executive Director, the ARC Foundation. She's also a lawyer, and she has done work in this area for years. She's in the business of rescuing girls, women abused, traumatized, and giving them shelter and helping them to live life all over again well. Mercy Labi is Deputy Commissioner of the Commission on Human Rights and Administrative Justice. She's been very unequivocal in the course of this week that she is not 18. She cannot be betrothed. She cannot be married. Pure and simple. Shraj has shared statistics with us on this phenomenon that happens many places in the country. Very little girls whose future being stolen from them. We will start with Sheila Minka-Premo, lawyer and senior legal practitioner and development consultant, ALC Law Consult. Of course, she is just too known, and I mean too known. She has done a lot of research on family law and gender and development issues. She's got publications on these issues, a lot of them, and she also joins us. Thank you very much. Let's begin with Sheila Minka-Premo. Good morning, and thank you for your time this morning. Please unmute your mic.
Good morning, and thank you very much.
Great to have you. Only hoping that your line will be clean so that we can enjoy.
US as well.
Great. So she was just saying hi to the two of you as well.
Right. Good morning.
Hi, Sheila.
All right. So first, when you heard about this, what was running through your mind? And up to today, this morning, what have you been thinking?
Okay, thank you very much. When I heard about this, I think I heard about it on Sunday or Monday, following the event. I was quite surprised that this was occurring. I know it is something which
Okay, her line obviously.
It's a kind of occurs.
Sheila's line is obviously not the best. I think we can raise her direct on phone so that we can speak to her and benefit from her extensive knowledge on this subject. I pose the same question to you, Angela.
Well, yes, I was a bit surprised because I thought that by now people should know the legal age of marriage in this country. I mean, it is even such that even at 18, if you want to marry, you need the consent of your parents. The law is that protective. It's only at 21 that actually you can go ahead and marry without the consent of parents. So I was a bit surprised. I thought we should know. On the other hand, having worked in this area for a long time, sometimes it doesn't surprise me too much, because in this country we still have many issues that have to do with children, children as boys and girls, and children as girls, okay, that have not been resolved despite the laws that we have in the land. So you have this mixed thing going on at the same time. And I'm sure it probably is even going on in other places if we are not careful enough to start looking out for some of these things. So yes, that's what I felt.
So, and I know Diana will speak on her professional capacity as the Attorney General's department and how they think, which we already have, a glimpse into what they are thinking. But it's important to know how you also felt when you heard the news before you began to gather your facts and to eventually issue a statement.
Thank you very much, Samson. I believe my feelings are no different from what Sheila and Angela have expressed. Worry also, because as Angela indicated, you would think that in this year of 2024, proceeding on the allegation, and I keep saying that it hasn't yet been proven, but assuming it's proven, there's a sense of worry that in 2024, people would be either oblivious or ignorant of generally human rights and particularly children's rights. But I must put on record that the public outcry also gave me some sense of happiness, because the public outcry is a demonstration for me of the substantial understanding of the general public of fundamental human rights, particularly children's rights. The converse is also true, because then it indicates that in 2024, we're still having some of these worrying cultural practices existent. So I was happy that at least Ghanaians are alert to human rights generally. They can at least sense a possible infraction of the laws on human rights, particularly on children's rights. Of course, social media has also contributed to this. So I'm glad that some progress, at least if we look at it historically, has been made in the sensitization. But it also tells us there is more room for improvement. Thank you.
And despite that, when you issued your statement, you also sought to educate by quoting the law.
That's correct.
To help people to appreciate it.
That's correct.
Why was it that important to refer people to what the law says?
Right. It became important because in the midst of the public outcry, there were some seeming justifications for cultural practices. And I like to point out, so there was an intersection between cultural rights and children's rights. And so it was imperative on our part to point out that assuming the facts are proven, there is clearly a breach of children's rights, and without prejudice to our cultural rights. And so it was important, of course, by our constitution, it is imperative that where there is an offense, it must be clearly spelled out, and the punishment for same is also equally spelled out. And that is why our letter indicated, first of all, the provision, the law, and what is possibly the infraction of that particular law, and also accompanied it with the sanctions for breach of that law.
Do we have Mary joining us? Okay. Have we been able to restore Sheila's line? Hello, Sheila. Okay. So we are going to get her direct on phone rather than Zoom so that we speak to her directly that way. Now, the morning after the news broke and everybody began to express concern, it didn't take long, and then we saw a statement under the hand of former Attorney General Aiko to former Ambassador to Canada, correct? And now also the sort of the lawyer for the Gadangbe, group, issue a statement and indicate that this was betrothal and people should not be as frenzied as they were, and that there was actually no marriage, and that they agreed with the position of the Wulomo. Right after that, then we had the tons of messages coming in from FIDA. The AG issued a statement. We had from NCC. We had from Occupy Ghana. We had from Child Rights. So many of them.
Yes. Yes, I mean, it's important that these messages come out, these press releases, to clarify the situation. Because if you look at that section in the Children's Act, remember this act is set within a certain framework, and we even have policies adopted to give flesh to the act. For example, the family welfare law, the child and family welfare policy, not law. If you read it together, you understand that there are people who are expected to take care of children's protection and rights. Families, parents, traditional authorities, religious authorities, all of these people, everyone, in fact, the child is in the center of the discussion around its survival, protection, development, participation. The child is in the center. So even the child himself or herself, if they begin to think, are supposed to be able to voice out their own views about what they think is also good for them. And that is why we adopted the framework that we call the welfare principle of the best interest of the child. Right. We didn't just say best interest, because there's a place where sometimes people look as though they're pushing rights to a nonsensical degree. In Ghana, we adopted the welfare principle, meaning that the child, by reason of their vulnerability, needs the protection of all of us, including even the child, if they're able to reason, and the best interest, which adopts the language of rights protection. It was a very careful marriage. And that is why when you come to the law itself and it talks about refusal for betrothal or marriage, you must read that whole portion together. You cannot separate them and say betrothal, marriage are two different things when it comes to the child who cannot consent to either betrothal or marriage. That is the import of that section. Betrothal is, in our language, we call it, in the Twi language, esiwa. Esiwa is a pledge of marriage. It is that it's so close to marriage that a child who cannot consent to marriage cannot be consenting to betrothal. We assume that they are not in that position because of their vulnerability to even consent to betrothal. So whether it is betrothal or a subject of a dowry transaction or marriage, there is a clear section. You can't do this. And if you do it, these are the sanctions. So I'm surprised that, a few he's not the only one, have been trying to make distinctions between betrothal and marriage and whether you have to force somebody before you can consent to betrothal. It doesn't matter at all. Whether she's 16, whatever, she cannot be betrothed. And remember also that within this frame of the law are the whole gamut of protections that we as adults, especially parents, you have to protect your child from negligence, from discrimination, from violence, from abuse, from exploitation, from physical and moral hazards. That is, for me, the most interesting part of it. This is found in, I think, Section 6 of the Children's Act. Physical and moral hazards. I know the one who drafted this legislation, and I can bet you I am in her head right now. She knew exactly why she put all those words together. And it's time for us to understand the import of the law in terms of protecting children from a broader framework of all society. And that is why betrothal and marriage cannot be different for the children.
Let's get to Sheila. And thank you very much once again. We know that you have made a commitment to this platform to be able to speak to us despite your very tight schedule this morning. So thank you once again. Now, Angela just spoke, and it is as if the custom doesn't matter at all. The people are telling us about the custom.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I think that Angela and Honorable Diana have said most of all I would have said. Then as far as the particular
particular issue you're looking at, okay, what about the customs? Under our law, customary law is part of the laws of the country. If you look at Article 11 of the Constitution, which gives you the hierarchy of laws we have the Constitution, we have enactments by Parliament, we have rules, regulations, then we have what we call the common law. And the common law is defined to include what we received from our colonial masters, as well as the customary law of the various communities. So customary law is recognized as part of the laws of the country. However, it is subject to the Constitution. Mm-hmm. If you look at Article 26 of the Constitution, it's very clear and says that every person is entitled to enjoy, practice, profess, maintain, or promote any cultural, language, tradition, or religion subject to the provisions of this Constitution. And then Subsection 2 says all cultural practices that dehumanize or are injurious to the physical and mental well-being are prohibited. Mm-hmm. So, whilst we recognize customary law as part of our law, it is very clear in our Constitution, which is our supreme law, that if it causes any harm or injury, then it is prohibited. Angela has indicated that we also have Acts of Parliament, which is the Children's Act in particular, which protects our children. It says that they should not be subject to any moral hazard, etc. We all know what goes on when it comes to marriage. Marriage has a lot of things that have to do with it, including sex, etc. The same Constitution, as well as our Children's Act, says that the Constitution, the Criminal Offences Act says you can't have sex, you can't give consent to sex until you're 16. Yeah. Okay? So the two purport to have married a girl who is 12 years old, who also even under the law can't even give proper consent. It is wrong. It could be a customary right that it is subject to the Constitution, and therefore it is not right. The customary practice which we have, which is these betrothals, which the Section 14 of the Children's Act prohibits, it is not allowed under our law. And Acts of Parliament are superior to the other laws that are mentioned, as I indicated in the hierarchy. Mm. So yes, he has the right to practice the customary law, but it should not be done in such a way that it causes harm or injury to somebody. And that child stands to be harmed if that child is allowed to marry.
You made reference to Article 26. Article 28 speaks about the children and their rights and how they ought to enjoy certain protections. And Angela, actually, what she refers to, Article 28, 1D, says that children and young persons receive special protection against exposure to physical and moral hazards. Now, I've heard elsewhere that is being suggested, including from Ace and Coma, that we are seeking to elevate something we call custom that may not exactly be part of our laws when we give the education that customs are part of our law. A custom is not necessarily customary law. And at a point when we have made a specific law outlawing something, you cannot elevate a custom over that particular law. What do you say to that?
I totally agree with the assertion Ace is making. Okay? Because based on what I said earlier, yes, while the Constitution recognizes the customary law of the various communities, etc., the same Constitution indicates that the rights of children is very important and they need to be protected. Besides, the most customary laws that we have are basically unwritten. Most of them are oral. There are few that are written. I had the privilege of working with the National House of Chiefs on a research project called the Statement of Customary Law on Land and Family. and we did it in a number of traditional areas. We uncovered some of these things which are ongoing. This Istiwa, which has different names in different parts of the country. We saw some in the northern part, some in the southern part as well. And one of the things which at the end of the research was indicated is that any practice which there's a specific law, again, which is there's an act of parliament that has been enacted which says that something else, some other principle is the one which is in place, then that's right. It goes back. Okay, what is there? If the statutory law that is enacted in place, that means to regulate that area. So it's right. When it comes to do it, marriage, 18 years is the time that has been set by which a person can legally, which is also in line with international, right? Especially that can side on, including the prevention right of the child. 18. And then it is the amount that states that not married with religion. 8. Children are active, which is one of the laws. You cannot trust make a child total or marriage or marriage. Okay, you cannot force it. So 8 is up to 5.
I think we are still having a bit of a difficulty with your line. So my final question to you will be, what should happen? What must happen from here?
Thank you very much. As the Deputy AG indicated, has been indicated in their letter, appropriate investigations to be undertaken. And following the investigation, the things that we have seen, we have seen or heard are established. Then the appropriate sanctions, the appropriate prosecution should take place and sanctions meted out. I think that this issue has come up. There's a national strategy in place to try to address child marriage from the year, I think, 2013 to 2026. It is still in place. And for me, this is a classic case which we should see through to set a big precedent in this country so that nobody will think of doing anything like this once it is established that it was actually a marriage or it was a betrothal. What we've seen, we don't want it repeated anymore. So I think that the law should work. It should be seen to work. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sheila Minka-Premo, speaking to us there. Now back to you and Diana Sunaba-Dapa, Deputy Attorney General and Deputy Minister for Justice. The Plan International, they are one of those who issue statements. And in their statement, they said, Plan Ghana, they said, it is imperative that the government of Ghana upholds its obligation to protect the rights of all individuals and take concrete actions to eliminate harmful practices such as child early and forced marriages. Would you say that so far you are taking steps that gives Ghanaians this assurance?
Right, I believe so. I think yesterday the Ministry of Information came out with some release. But before I go that, Sam, you made a very good distinction between cultural practices and customary law.
Okay.
Now, if you look at Article 26, it gives the right to practice your culture. But then it is one of the articles that has a caveat, which is that the customary practices which are dehumanizing or injurious to our physical. So just to bring it out that absolute statement that culture is part of our laws is not necessarily right. There is a caveat, and people should not, close their eye to that particular caveat. Now, on the issue of the step the government is taking, and it's in sync with the welfare principle that is established under Section 12 of Act 560. Indeed, when the whole incident was reported and the euphoria, there was an interministerial committee that was set up, made up of the Ministry of Interior, the Chieftaincy Ministry, the Gender Ministry, and of course the Office of the Attorney General and Ministry of Justice was there to give the necessary advice. we believed, and this is what we acted on, that in the midst of all the euphoria, it was the best interest of the child that was important. Right. In as much as people were agitating for prosecution, I think the focus was too much on the offense that had been allegedly committed than on the interest and welfare of the child. And so in accordance with what we believe should be the priority, which is the child, the Ministry of Gender and of course the Ghana Police Service immediately took the child and the relative to a place of safety. As the press release from the Ministry of Information indicated, the child is currently doing well, going through the necessary social welfare recommended protocols. There are 2 caregivers. There's a medical doctor that are taking the child through the necessary protocols. There's a case worker on standby to ensure that all the protocols regarding the welfare of the child and the best interest of the child are clearly adhered to. Of course, concurrently, then police are also doing their investigation. And that's what the statement indicated, that the Ghana Police Service has taken statements from the Wolomo. They've also taken statements from the parents of the child. And so my admonition to all of us is, I think there was too much concentration on the crime itself. It is good. As I've indicated, I have been happy about the sense of alertness of Ghanaians and the general public on human rights and children's rights. But I think we should equally bring to the fore a discussion on the best interest of the children. And the Office of the AG is consistently in touch with the Gender Ministry to ensure that the interest of the children is done. So there are currently medical issues that she's going through, psychological treatment that she's going through, and of course all the determination and assessment of the age, etc. are going through. We are on top of this matter, I can assure you, and hopefully next week I think we should be making some progress beyond what you've already.
Now, it is a fact that she's not 12. What we are not too sure about is whether she's 16 or will turn 16 in July. Is that a central part of what your instructions are to the investigators?
Sam, my position is that whether 12, 15 or 16, the law is clear if you look at section 14. And I've heard discussion. And for me, again, I keep saying that this event is a good opportunity for us as Ghanaians to resensitize ourselves. It is neither here or there whether 12, whether 15 or 16. Of course, I'm mindful of section 122 of Act 560 on the determination of the age of a child. It is key only for purposes of ensuring that section 14 has not been breached. And clearly, the arguments that are being thrown out there, whether 12, 15 or 16, still does not meet the age criteria. So if there's any determination of ages as to 18, so that 12, 15, 16, I think is neither here or there. Betrothal, marriage, again, respectfully, I have to disagree with my learned, respected senior. It's also neither here or there. I think the Section 14 is clear, and even Section 1, it defines a child within the context of Act 560. It's 18, so whether 12, 15 or 16, and if we are invoking Section 14, why are we discussing even 12, 15 or 16? But of course, as part of the prosecutorial processes on evidence, it is important to determine the age only for purpose of ensuring that the child is 18 or not. But 12, 15 or 16, I'm afraid still doesn't cut it.
It's immaterial.
It's immaterial, yes.
And please give the education back to our audience in a summary. The age is immaterial now for as long as she's not 18 because what? Because
Section 1 and 14 of Act 560, first of all, Section 1 defines a child to be someone who is 18 and above. I mean, who is below 18.
Right.
If you go again to the Section 14, and so I've heard also the arguments that when people look at Section 14 and say that the age of marriage is 18 and say, well, betrothal is not 18. I said, look, you forget, the opening sentence is that no one shall force a child. Mm-hmm. And that determinative interpretation is in Section 1. Again, the purpose of Section 2 is only to emphasize the marriage, but it still does not take away. If you are telling me then betrothal is not 18, then what is the age for betrothal? It's not stated, and it's covered under Section 1.
So the emphasis is that you concur with Mercy Labi that below 18, there cannot be betrothal or marriage,
Absolutely
just as
right.
Angela has also emphasized.
Absolutely right. It
cannot happen at all.
It is immaterial. Look at section 14 carefully. And I always like to say you have to give a purposive interpretation to Act 560. It starts off with section 1 on who a child is. And the purpose of the act, if you read the long head, is to protect children, in summary. And so if you are looking at a particular provision that emphasizes that marriage ought to be 18, to say that, well, then betrothal need not be 18, I'm afraid I do not agree with you. Because section 1 and 14, you have to look at it purposively.
I don't know if I'll put you in an invidious position if I ask you this question, but I must still ask it. In that circumstance, a crime has still occurred.
If proven, if the facts are proven, and it's critical to prove this fact, the age is key. But I've indicated that the age is key not because people are peddling around that she's 12, 15, or 16. The age is key being 18.
The Gadangbe statements, the Mankralo's confirmations, the press conference they all hold, confirm she's not 18. They confirm that she's been betrothed to, some say to the priest, some say to the spirit that the priest serves. So, offense has occasioned, correct?
You know, by my profession, I tend to be slow in stating definitely because the police are still conducting their investigation. Even though we may have read on the news outlets, I believe that we must hasten slowly by allowing the police to go through and give us the dockets with all the evidences. And on the issue of marriage to spirit or deity, something, you know, Ghana has a very broad human rights framework. And I like to tell people that even if you look at clause 5 of our Article 33, it is so it's so encompassing. It says that the rights, declarations, and duties that have been mentioned in Chapter 5 does not exclude those that have not been specified.
They are inexhaustive.
Exactly, they are inexhaustive. And if you look at the true intendment of Act 560, there is that understanding. So even if you talk about spiritual marriage, the issue is the welfare principle. Whatever has happened, can we rightfully, reasonably say that it augurs well for the welfare or the best interest of the children?
The very reason I qualified my question to her, are you ready to state that from the facts you know so far, from the confirmations from the Gadangbe group and also the council and from they themselves in their press conference and all, she is not 18. She has been betrothed. A crime has occasioned.
All three of us are lawyers, and we know what the rule is.
She will be prosecuting as Attorney General. So we can excuse her. You will not be prosecuting.
Oh, that's fine, but we still want to go by the rule that it has to be proven. At least you have to take a case to the courts. But for me, you know, it gets even more interesting. If she's 18, assuming without admitting, as Kweku Baku used to say, if she's 18,
he's watching.
You know that there's compulsion of marriage. Can we say that this child has agreed to be married to a 63-year-old man or a deity? That would also come into question, assuming she was 18. Because there's a crime of compulsion of marriage. You can't force anybody to be married against their will. And then we would have to check that. Secondly, the deity issue becomes more interesting for me because we also do have section 314A of our Criminal Offences Act that talks about customary servitude that was actually promulgated to take the issue of ritual and customary servitude into consideration. And we know where that came from. Trokosi, the bride of the gods. Now, in that particular custom, a child, almost always a girl, goes in to serve for something she has not committed. She is married to the gods, not the human being. But it's the human being who puts her under labor, who has sex with her, who has children with her, who is able to say, go here, and she goes, come here, and she comes. So I think even pushing that issue of marriage to a deity complicates the matter. I mean, we can do the analysis ad nauseum, okay? Now, even though this may not be a trocosi, issue per se, there are similarities if you are pushing the argument of deity. So we need to tread very, very cautiously. Besides, the law doesn't deal with spiritual matters.
Correct.
Okay? We are sitting here, we know, I'm a theologian, I know I am spirit, soul, and body. But it's my body you're seeing and interacting with. And so the law deals with certainties. And so the law won't deal with
the metaphysical. Because the judges who are supposed to deal with this, they are not spirits.
They're not spirits.
They don't have
exactly. You
divination
may call them
powers.
My Lord temporal for all you
Right.
can. They still do not have those divination powers. And
So they look
on.
for the hard facts.
Exactly. So we are dealing with a human being. That child is not spirit. And we have in this country customs, in certain parts of the country where, a child may be born with a certain defective deformity, and they actually call them spirit children, and they can go and leave them in forest, so they die. Now, if you do that, and we get you, we have to prosecute you. Because you may think all you want that that's a spirit child, but we will not allow you to destroy that physical being.
I asked
that's
about
before us.
the first threshold of what may be a fact that a crime has been committed in terms of a breach of the Children's Act,
Right.
which is also punishable according to the law, as the Attorney General issued a statement and told us about. You could go to jail for a year. Or pay a fine of, is it
or both?
A fine of a total of, is it 3,000 or so?
Yes.
Now,
You have to look at
the chieftaincy minister, when he was saying that the priority of the state was to secure the child so that her interests, welfare will be protected, continue to emphasize that they wanted to be sure that she doesn't get violated sexually. Which would mean another crime.
Yes.
That's correct.
Correct?
Yes, defilement.
Defilement.
Yes, 7 to 25 years.
Good. So if it is established that there has been sexual encounters.
Oh my goodness. Well, then that gets worse and worse, and I'm hoping it's not that. You know why I'm saying that? I'm really hoping it's not that. I mean, I was in the prosecutions department of the Ministry of Justice for almost 10 years, and I always had a thing about prosecution. I'm not a hard lawyer, So even when I'm prosecuting somebody, I'm thinking the way the defense should be thinking, because sometimes you can see, oh, what did we do? And probably that's why I'm doing
Ignorance of the law is no excuse.
It's no excuse, yes, but you can see that human side come out. So I have always believed in the carrot and stick approach, especially when we are dealing with these issues around culture, customary rights, and all of those things, because there's still a lot of education and sensitization. And believe you me, some of the frustration we've had in this work is the fact that it has always appeared as though NGOs primarily do this work. We fold up and sleep when there's no money. As for the state, it is only when this happens that it starts running all over. And that's why I was interested in the interministerial committee that was set up. I said, if we suddenly discover another one here, another one there, are we going to set up interministerial committees for all these things if they come up? We should do what we need to do professionally.
You use one case as an example. That's what they are doing.
Yes, but
They're
then
setting up a high-powered
let me
interministerial
tell you
committee.
what I'm saying about the carrot and stick approach, okay? You would realize that, for example, the DOFSU unit was set up in such a way that it will respond to some issues that are sensitive and yet also criminal. And so it not only looks at the law, it also looks at victim support. It looks at families. It does many things. So if you are not a well-trained DOFSU police officer, for example, you can mess up a little. But if you're well-trained, and that's why I'm thinking about a similar thing that occurred and has occurred a few times. Like this case, I'm not saying religiously, it's the same group, or no. But in professional policing, by that specialized unit, the head withdrew the child. When she withdrew the child to a place of safety, then she went after the one she was also 12. I'm saying this because I was involved. And then she went after the one who wanted to marry her and the whole group of family from the both sides who were arranging this thing. It was her little brother who went and told the police that they're going to marry off my little sister. I don't want it to happen. He ran from school to the police and reported. Immediately, the child was taken away, withdrawn, put into a shelter. She went after the people, and it's interesting how it happened. She began to educate them on the law. Now you can imagine, a whole community also followed. And she said, if you're going to cause any ruckus, I'm going to have you all arrested and prosecuted. And then she explained the law to such an extent to the people. The mother said, I was married off at 12. I mean, look at me now. Nothing has happened to me and so on. It's our practice. And she said, you can believe all you want, practice all you want. It's against the law. By the time she had thoroughly educated them, the people realized if we don't stop this, we are all going to jail. She also realized that she needed to keep the child away for a while to ensure that the danger is completely past and the family is ready to take her back. That's exactly what happened. Years later, I meet this little girl and she tells me, Auntie, I'm in second year medical school. And I said, this is professional policing from the idea in which DOFSU was set up. So it's not always about like a
rush to prosecute.
Yes, rush to prosecute. It's important because the law is the law and we must. But we must bring in this aspect that applies the carrot and the stick.
Right. Let me bring in Mercy Lardy from the Commission on Human Rights and Administrative Justice, and then I return to you for your final comments on, what you think should be happening in earnest, particularly regards the welfare of the child and the mother who are now in the state's custody. There are people who are already saying, oh, give it a week or two, we will all forget this, they will all forget this, this child will suffer, and so on and so forth. Oheneyere Nana Danswa, Gifty Auntie, also has been telling us the story of one such girl that she rescued.
I know.
And now this girl has graduated from university.
Yes.
Things that would have been lost, a beautiful life.
Yes, and we didn't have to set up an interministerial committee.
I'll tell you, I'll comment on that one. If you give me
okay, so thank you very much, Mercy Lardy, for your time. We understand that you also have a very urgent meeting to attend to, but you needed to commit to this for as briefly as we can so you can go. Shraj has shared some statistics with us about complaints that have come, and children's rights complaints dominate. 10,525 of the is the total complaints, and children's rights complaints, we are looking at 3,509. That's 33.3% of the complaints. Help us understand these statistics and what Shraj, by your mandate to educate the people, what you want the people to know, particularly the people in Nungwa, the people in my village, where some of these things continue to happen.
Thank you, Samson. My regards to Honorable Diana and Auntie Jamina, and then Auntie Sheila, who joined. In fact, the statistics
we decided that to have this discussion this morning, we're going to have the very best. And we are thankful that you all agreed to be on the show. Yes.
Thank you. But
yes, and adjust your device. We want to see your beautiful face. Thank you. Now we can see you. Right.
Thank you very much. Yes, as I've said, the statistics that we've given is right. When you look at the commission, we have 3 mandates: the human rights, admin justice, and then anti-corruption mandates. All the 3 mandates, it's where we have received the 10,000 cases. But when you come down to human rights alone, 10,156 complaints. But that's for 2023. And out of that 10,153, 3,509 are children's rights complaints. And looking at the subject that we are discussing now, we received 25 complaints about child marriage, 2023. When you look at the previous statistics, you will see that every year we receive over 20 complaints concerning child marriage. So the menace is still there. I wasn't surprised when I heard it actually, but I was surprised about the reasons they were given. The reasons they were given, I was surprised, but I wasn't surprised of the action because we've been receiving a lot of complaints about that. And as Madam Jamina said, our modus operandi is the best interest of the child. So when normally most of the complaints that we receive, it's the initial complaints. So like when they have planned everything to perform the marriage ceremony, somebody will run and come and lodge a complaint with Shraj, and we have to go in to stop the marriage and also protect the child. That has had a lot of interventions that Shraj has been doing. I remember one, as they were giving examples, one in the Greater Accra here, we have to even try to change the school because of the stigma. We have to facilitate for another school to take the child. So that's what we've been doing. It is going on. And now what we realize is that because people have known that when they perform the marriage rites, it will come out, people will see, and they will come and report. Now they will not perform the marriage rites. They will ask the child to go and live with the person. So you see the child living with the person, and then when the child is 18, they will do whatever they are supposed to do. But from 12 years, you see that the child is living with the person. In law, we call it cohabitation. And the person will be cohabiting with a man for all this while because they know that when they perform the marriage ceremony openly, people will hear and they will report to Shraj or they will report to the police. And I think that is another area that we have to look at. We've not received a complaint yet on this, and therefore we cannot talk about ever it's going on. But what we know, as I stated last week, is that any form of betrayal, it's a crime. That is what the Children's Act has stated. So whether it's to a deity or to a human being or whatever, it's a crime. Therefore, what we have to do is that the education must go on. We've been doing education. When I give you statistics of education that we've done, but we still think that we have to do more. Other institutions also have to help to do more of the education to nip down this menace. A lot of, when you take our statistics, you will see that most of them happens in particular regions. Most of our statistics, you see that it happens in particular regions. And we have to intensify our education in these regions where a lot of these child marriages happen.
Which are these regions that dominate in that, in this case?
The northern part.
The northern is a broad place.
25 complaints that we received. Out of the 25, 12 is from Northeast. 12 is from Northeast. So you could see, when you take 5-year statistics, I can give you 5-year statistics. That is 2018, we received 32 complaints of child marriage. 2019, 44 complaints. 2020, 25. 2021, 21. And then that's 2023. I don't have the 2022 immediately with me. But 2023, that's 25. So you will see that it's still happening.
Yeah, so which regions again?
Yes, I'll give you the statistics in a minute on.
Right, and I was going to ask you this question, which I will turn to my guests in the studio also, so that we begin to wrap up. But I was asking myself whether this question has not already been answered by the law. The Ghana Psychology Association, in their statement, they said that we call on traditional and religious leaders to speak out against child marriage and other harmful practices that destroy children, and to promote the safety, rights, and well-being of children in their communities. The law is already there. So what can the religious and traditional leaders be doing in addition to the law? Now, first, what do you say are the regions that dominate?
Okay, so when we take our statistics, we will see that I'll be with you.
Yeah, so the regions in the north, north, number one, and we want to learn about others as well. Yes. Now, before I get back to Mercy, and perhaps I just get to her, and then she will be the person who speaks to bring the curtains down on this discussion. Now, tying it in with the safety of the child and people not being particularly sure about how we do things typically in this country, that now there is attention to it and then it will just fizzle out and this child may not even get the proper care going forward. What do you think religious leaders, traditional leaders can do? First, yes, Dinah.
Right, thank you. But Samson, let me just take a minute to react to one thing about the Inter-Ministerial Committee, which I believe Dr. Dramina Boaje has expressed her views on. And I would say that Inter-Ministerial Committee is important for a number of considerations, not to in any way treat this case different, but as she rightly indicated, no two cases are the same. And then she also mentioned that the responsibility of the upbringing of the child, it includes the government and it includes the traditional authorities. And thirdly, we look at the glaring way in which this ceremony, whatever it is called, was carried out. And so for us as government, it was a bit shocking because the question is, in all the discussion to protect children, to eradicate child marriages, traditional authorities have not been excluded. And also we cannot, in all respect, I put on record, the office of the Olomo cannot be underestimated. And so for us, the worry has been that within this discussion of including even traditional authorities, and then we have such a respectable traditional authority being at the forefront of this openly, that is a cause for concern. And of course, that's what the Interministerial Committee is about. So
people are also concerned that the Constitution requires that the law should be respected of no one. Exactly. And that we are all equal before the law. It doesn't matter whether you are president or you are not.
Absolutely.
So if it was that carpenter in that corner who was caught in this, he would have been arrested, thrown into police custody, by now may have appeared before a court, would have been remanded in jail. Why is it that there is a difference in treatment?
There's no difference in treatment. And I beg to differ that it is not the case that automatically a person gets remanded for offenses. The police are on top of their job. They have taken statements, they've arrested, taking statements. The investigations are ongoing. It is not the case that once this there's an allegation of this offense, the person will be remanded. Let's not forget the issues of bail, etc. But what I'm saying is that for us, the concern is that we thought we had made some strides, particularly including traditional authorities. And Samson, it will be remiss on our part not to appreciate the peculiarity of this particular case for the office of the Wolomo. It cannot be denigrated with all respect, and we need to give that due deference without prejudice to the non-discrimination in the application of the law. I have indicated, other than that, the Office of the Attorney General would not have issued that letter, and it would have been in the public, that proceed with investigation. I believe that what has happened, there are a number of things we need to consider. Yes, prosecution, but as I've indicated, personally and professionally, primarily the interests of the children.
That's right.
And for me, a third angle, which is an education and resensitization, it means that something has gone amiss, particularly when we've included even our traditional authorities. Our queen mothers, our chiefs, etc. And in 2024, we are having these reports. And so that is why for us as a government, we need to come back and take stock. So I believe that all these considerations must be looked at.
What's the guarantee, what's the assurance that this child and her mother will not be left in the next few weeks, and then they get into the community, they may be subject of ridicule and attack and so on.
That's the assurance, is to give you the assurance. But thankfully, social media and people like you, I believe Doc just hinted to me that she will be on top of this case. The Office of the Attorney General is also on top of this matter. We intend to do, as I say, a taking of a restocking of our own understanding, the sensitization that has taken place, and what needs to be done. I believe this case has received so much public scrutiny that it will be risky even for anybody, and we don't intend to.
Are you giving the police any timelines to complete their investigations?
We have, we ask the lawyers to say as soon as possible, but we're looking at in the next week, I believe that there will be significant progress that will further be made, and then the public will be made aware of that.
Thank you so very much, Diana. And yes, Angela, you deal with people who find themselves in this place, and you give them a home, you give them a place to lay their heads. And I think it will not be wrong that when we are done with this show, we're done with you. You may have to announce ACT Foundation, the project you are on now, the monthly small contributions that people can do to help in that regard.
Yeah, in the spirit.
What do you think? Yes, what do you think the state's steps should look like to give confidence that they are actually serious about this, and particularly for the child and the mother? And then you are also in the clergy. So religious and traditional leaders, what role should they be playing? Okay,
so very quickly, for the child, the practical things is what the government is doing now. Keeping them in a safe place, providing social, psychosocial care and all of that, even medical doctor and all of that.
How long should that be?
It should be for as long as she's still a child, because of the stigma, because of the psychological impacts on her, because of what might even happen to her parents, the threats and all of that. So the state must still stay on course. The state must also ensure that the social welfare plan for care is in place, because sometimes there are gaps. I mean, we live in this system. We know that sometimes our social welfare lacks the resources and all of that. So they should make sure social welfare has the resources and also has a plan that will stay on course until the girl is over 18 years old and can live in a community, with her parents, with freedom. Okay. Now, when it comes to the government, I think I go with what Deputy Attorney General is saying in terms of resensitization. But you can't do it outside of your own frameworks. We have forgotten that we have set in place several frameworks. Sometimes the T's are crossed, the I's are dotted, and we simply forget about it. If we go back to those frameworks and look at how we are supposed to set in place community systems of protection, they are not difficult. Sometimes it just needs somebody doing their work, putting their eyes on the ball, and ensuring that these things are happening. Sometimes they'll tell you it's the money. Sometimes it's not the money at all. It's somebody just making sure that they are doing what they said they would do. The district assemblies are the ones supposed to protect children within their jurisdictions. How much does the district assembly, the MCs, know about the protective frameworks that we have? We have to check all of those things so we can catch the issues right at the community level and take them through the systems that we have. It is just the same people around the children who will help us to protect the children, and we need to put them in the frameworks that we already have. That's also part of our frustration. And so I am appealing to my sister that we should go back to the frameworks. We have one in the domestic violence implementation policy. We have one in the child law and family welfare policy. Let's look at the frameworks and begin to work on those frameworks for protection. Traditional authorities and religious, please, leadership. That's all I can say. We won't expect our leaders to do the things that they don't expect their followers not to do. Whether you're a traditional leader, a religious leader, whatever political leader, we're expecting you not to perpetrate these acts against the most vulnerable of our society. So please, if it's about education, get educated. If it is about whatever it is, but don't be caught on the wrong side of the law. You won't be a model.
Thank you very much. Tell us about the Shelter Treasury Fund that the ACT Foundation has been up to. Tell us just briefly about it.
You know,
and I'm projecting this. Look at the contact numbers there, and please grab your phone and donate. They are doing a beautiful job for vulnerable mothers, women, and children who need a home so they can gain their sanity and be useful to our society. So that's the ACT Foundation, the Shelter Treasury Fund. The bank accounts are there. You can contribute to that. And also there's the MTN number. That one I invite you right now. Pick your phone, and send them something so they can take care of our sisters who are there. It's 024 3777 773 0243 777 777 Yes.
Samson, you said it all. We've been at this for 25 years. I can't describe to you the number of cases we've seen or the kinds of cases we've had to handle in this country. And that is even just the tip of the iceberg.
Right.
Because how many can we do at a time and all of that? And so this is like a legacy project. We want it to continue running. We need the support of government, of civil society personalities, of people like, I think I'm coming after you, a bit of your salary. You know, we need to keep this running. For a fact, all the state institutions use our services to protect children, to protect women. But we don't receive any funding from any of those spaces. So thank you so much for this.
You're welcome.
I mean, we're asking people to help.
Let me now go to Mercy. And Mercy, thanks once again for your patience and time. So you close this chapter of the show with us. Once again, we just want to have an idea of the regions or the areas where child marriages are predominant, so that we can all keep an eye in helping Shraj in the education that you have been mounting to reduce the occurrences in these places.
Thank you, Stephen.
Samson. That's all right.
Yeah, the 25 complaints that we received, you could see that the 12 is from Northern Region, 2 is from Northeast, 4 is from Blue East, 2 from Upper West, then 1 Upper East, 1 Western North, and 3 OT. So you can see that it has a cost.
Do you have an expectation that once you are of the firm view, which all your sisters here confirm, that there cannot be betrothal at this age, there cannot be marriage either, and so first is established, a crime has been committed in terms of the Children's Act, then there is also the investigation that must go on about whether or not there has been some sexual encounter where potentially there may be a question of defilement. You have expectations that there will be prosecution?
Samson is yes. We believe in our prosecution, the police, and then my sister, Honorable Attorney General there. I know what she can do when it comes to human rights, because she is a human rights activist. As I said, we have not received a complaint yet, and we don't prosecute. When we receive the complaint, we look at the best interest of the child, and we are happy that the Ministry of Gender has taken the child, and the child is being guided or protected. And one thing I want to add is that this child has been indoctrinated in the belief of what the custom is. So when they are taking the child through the necessary protocols, I would suggest that they should also look at that one, because even if you don't take the indoctrination out of this girl, you will still believe that there is something that is going to happen to him if he doesn't marry or take the process that they have done. So I think the protocol should take into consideration all these things. What Shraj Strike started some time ago. We're talking about the religious leaders or faith-based organizations.
That's
some
right.
Time ago, yes, our project, that was 2019. We started a project like that, and we were going or meeting the leaders of faith-based organizations and then educating them on all these issues, because we know that some of them champion some of these things, and the reasons they give for giving their child out of marriage, normally I would say they have to, they use it as a belief in their religion. For example, they said that poverty is one. Two, we don't want the child to be be fornicating and other things. So let us give him a man to marry. So some of these reasons they give, I think, is actually not in line with the law. So when we meet the faith-based organization, the leaders, we educate them on the law, the children's rights, and all that the international instruments talks about. You know, aside our constitution, we have a lot of international instruments. We have the elimination of all forms of discrimination against women. We have the ICCPR and other things. All these things talk against child marriage. So it's not our law alone. When you go to international front, all these things, all these laws that Ghana has ratified. So that comes to where Honorable Diana was talking about, Article 33(5). We have ratified all these laws. So we should take steps to abolish child marriage. And as we've been doing, we will continue to do. But we need more support and resources to be able to go around all the countries.
If it is an offense, what is there to abolish?
Yes, it's an offense, but we know the international instruments state that states should take steps to abolish it. Okay. And that's what the state has done.
Okay.
To make it an offense.
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Mercy Lardy is Deputy Commissioner at the Commission on Human Rights and Administrative Justice. Earlier, you heard us speak to Sheila Minka Premo, lawyer and senior legal practitioner and development consultant. When I say lawyer and senior legal practitioner, what am I saying? I'm saying the same thing. Sometimes my production, the things you get me to say. Dr. Angela Dramina-Boaje is Executive Director, the ARC Foundation. And Diana Asunabadapa is Deputy Attorney General and Deputy Minister for Justice. We can't thank you enough. Thank you so very much.
Thank you for having
us. Right. So we take a break here. We return and I'll share some of your messages with you. A lot of your messages have come in. I'll share some of them with you. And Diana is happy about that because she says how we have become alert to such human rights makes them happy. And we need to be this alert so that we can all win. So when we return, I'll share some of those messages with you. But we will, with my next guest, be visiting the secretariat of racketeering in scholarship and greed at its peak. We have some information and pieces of evidence that point to racketeering, clear racketeering at the scholarship secretariat. In the picture you are seeing right now is a gentleman, his name is Reginald, and he made an application to the National Scholarship Secretariat. He was asked to take a test, aptitude test. That is his score. He got 93%. 93%. That's what he got. Did he get a scholarship? No. We'll come to tell you why. We'll be right back. You're welcome back. This is Newsfile. It's your most authoritative news analysis platform. And here on Newsfile, we put Ghana First. It's brought to you by Bank of Africa, as strong as a group and close as a partner. MTN everywhere you go. Ashesi University, educating ethical and entrepreneurial leaders for Africa. Robert & Sons Optical Services. That's your comprehensive eye care service provider for 33 years plus. My Way Insurance. Dial *165# on MTN to join My Way today. Syntex Tanks is strong, it's tough. Flamingo Paint, simply superior. DBS Industries Limited, roofing, Papa Fie. And here are some of your messages that we want to share with you. Collins Little Tete says, early marriage has devastating consequences for a girl's life. Effectively, child marriage ends her childhood. Girls are forced into adulthood before they are physically and mentally ready. Frimpong Benny says there is absolutely no justification to the child married issue. Our dear God Traditional Council should accept wrongdoing, so we will all move on. The most important thing is to learn from all this going forward. The more they try to explain, the more they expose themselves. Perez Awenam says that the occasion may simply be a traditional rite devoid of any sexual connotations. Yet, the meticulous organization and moderation of the ceremony resemble a marriage in the tangible realm. This aspect is what should engage the attention of the custodians of the Ga tradition. Now remember that there are chiefs within the Ga state who have criticized this and said that it should not be tolerated at all. Gasma says they are good to sleep with at 16 but can't marry at 16. Okay. I don't support child marriage. It's abhorrent. Let's increase the age threshold for consensual sex to 18 or above 18. Nilante van Kannison, is it? Says that sadly, the conversation about the Bobu Shrine happenings alienates Ga Dangbe culture, which must be part of the wholesome, edifying conversation. Okay, we hear you. Thank you very much for those messages. And then Yakubu Ibn Chambers says that I only find a subject worthy of public discourse and debate when the law isn't succinct on it. The issue of betrothal. What is the law's stance? What is the Constitution's stance? Are there ambiguities in the Constitution? Was the girl at the center of all these controversies a minor or not per the Constitution? It must be noted that there is no immunity for wrong, customary, and traditional practices in the Constitution of Ghana. Simpliciter. Posterity is waiting to judge the nation based on how we handle this issue. Thanks, Yakubu, for your message. Eraba Opoku Bediako says that we need to intensify our education like you mentioned. We are discussing this marriage thing today because somebody took a picture of the ceremony and circulated it, and for all you know, a deity who can buy a see-through has already benefited for investing in it. If that's the case, then the harm might have already been caused. How can we be a little more proactive to teach our girls to speak up against these things? And where do they run to if someone is pursuing them? Ideally, parents should be educating them, but where do the girls run to when the parents themselves are in support of these practices? Interesting there. I'll read this very final one. It's a bit long, but let me see how much of it I can read. It's from Kweku Entry Boesiako, and he says, the Constitution in Article 28.1 provides that 21C, in all cases, the interests of the children are paramount. D, children and young persons receive special protection against exposure to physical and moral hazard. The Children's Act prohibits all kinds of marriage for children under the age of 18. So first, this case is not merely about sexual relations with a minor. In fact, the age for consensual sex is 16, lower than the age for marriage, which is 18. Marriage places huge responsibilities on a young woman, especially in a patriarchal, traditional priesthood setting. Consensual sex, while it still places emotional and psychological burden on a young girl, pales into insignificance compared to what marriage at the age does to the young woman. Second, this marriage, whether to a 63-year-old priest or to a 1,000-year-old deity, is not about the interest of the child, which our Constitution mandates. Rather, it is about the interest of a 63-year-old man and his associates and like-minded traditional folk. Third, what is really at stake is that the law seeks to ban all kinds of marriage for a child under 18 because a child cannot be saddled with the huge responsibilities that come with whatever kind of marriage when that child cannot consent to being subjected to those responsibilities. He says a lot more, but this is where I will end this particular message. Now, let's get to the Scholarship Secretariat and ask a number of questions. And joining me on Zoom is, among other people, Suleimana Brahima, who is with the Fourth Estate, the Media Foundation for West Africa, who set up the Fourth Estate. And I think they're celebrating, is it 2 or 3 years now? Suleimana Brahima is Executive Director, Media Foundation for West Africa. Then we have also Suleimana Isifu, Research Fellow, Hans Rothenburg Institute, University of Hohenheim, Germany. The last time, I'm not sure if I got the pronunciation correct, but this time he will pardon me. Dr. Clement Park is MP, Bulsa South, and Deputy Ranking Member, Education Committee of Parliament. Here in the studio is Richard Jemfi, Director for International Relations and Partnerships, Ghana Scholarship Secretariat. Gentlemen, thank you for your time and welcome to Newsfile. Right. So, Suleimana Brahima, let's start with you. Media Foundation for West Africa, your product, that project, the Fourth Estate. You are getting a lot of plaudits in the Ghanaian society for the research-based journalism that you have been doing over the period. I understand you are how many years old now? Suleimana?
Hi, Samson, can you hear me?
Repeat what you said. I didn't hear you.
No, I said that it's been 3 years since we started the project.
Right. And you focus on, how do you go about the journalism under the Fourth Estate?
Well, so the Fourth Estate was created or established as a public interest investigative journalism project under our media and good governance program. So over the period, we've had a program that is focused on how we can support, promote, and empower the media to promote good governance, transparency, accountability. And it is under that program that we do all the media capacity building programs, we do the exchange programs, you know, we send people to newsrooms to offer training. Sometimes we offer some micro grants to newsrooms, all with the view of supporting the media and empowering them to be able to support, you know, and promote accountability, transparency, and all of that. But it got to a point we realized that we were investing so much and not getting enough of the results that we wanted to see. And that is because you empower a journalist, and sometimes it's either they move on, or the newsrooms that we are engaging may not even have the capacity to be able to absorb whatever we want them to do. And sometimes also it's all about the integrity of the people you are dealing with and who owns even the media that you are working with. So the idea was then, why don't we set up a project internally, bring on board or recruit a number of journalists who become staff of the Media Foundation for West Africa, and allow them and empower them to do the kind of journalism that we want to see in society. So in 2021, the whole idea was crafted, and then we had conversations with people like Manasseh and a few others, and they agreed to come on board. And so Manasseh was brought on board to lead it as the editor-in-chief. Then we had people like Edwin Appiah, Seth Bokwe, and a few others who joined. But we also realized that to make the impact that we want to make, it is important to bring on board young people, very smart, who have just finished their journalism training, so that we can groom them to be the journalists that we want them to be. And so we started what we call the Next Generation Investigative Journalism Fellowship, and brought on board, 10 journalists at a time. So after every cohort, we will retain some of them that we believe have the potential, have the talent to do the work that we want to do. And so quite a number of the stories that we are doing are actually being done by journalists who are maybe sometimes less than 5 years in the field, of course being guided by their seniors. So this scholarships one, for example, you see is done by Seth Bokwe and Thelma. Thelma is quite new in the field, but, given the orientation and the training that she has, she knows what it takes to do public interest journalism. So these are journalists who are staff of the Media Foundation, but are set and focused on doing public interest investigative journalism.
Right. Of course, the Minister for Information, Kojo Nkrumah, then, when he had to give his first report to Parliament about the use of the RTI Act, singled the Media Foundation for West Africa, Fourth Estate, out for praise for being the ones who have used the Right to Information Act the most. Of course, we know that the Media Foundation for West Africa participated or actually recruited lawyers, hired lawyers and other persons to go around the country to sensitize people about the Right to Information Act and the rest of them. This particular story about the Scholarship Secretariat is a product of the use of the RTI Act, correct?
Yes.
Okay, tell us about it.
So, sometime in 2021, there were a lot of concerns and talk about how the scholarship scheme was being abused in the country. People were complaining about having applied and not getting the scholarship. Then at the time, you also had a lot of instances where you would have somebody splash, some excellent grades by maybe somebody who has completed WASI secondary school, and has no resources to be able to further their education, and so they were appealing for funds to be able to pay their fees of 6,000 cedis or 7,000 cedis to get to the university. And so we then at that point said, okay, if people are complaining about this so much, and the Scholarship Secretariat is not publishing the list of the beneficiaries for all of us to know who are the people getting it, why don't we just file an RCR request to say, can you give us the list of beneficiaries of your scholarship scheme? Mind you, prior to that, Mr. Domelebo, the former Auditor General, had done an audit of Get Fund scholarships and established certain acts of impropriety and recommended that all scholarships must be forwarded to the Scholarship Secretariat in terms of funding for scholarships. So we did the application, Initially, they refused to grant the request on the basis that what we were requesting for had issues of privacy because we are looking for people's names and data and so on and so forth. We did an internal appeal, it didn't work, and so eventually we had to file a petition with the RTI Commission. The Commission then subsequently determined that no, the basis of saying what we were requesting had issues of privacy cannot be right because we are talking about how public funds have, and therefore they were ordered to provide the list that we have requested. And when we requested the list, we asked that we want it in PDF format because it's always easy to have to deal with electronic data. They then said, well, they were willing to give it to us, but they are using a system that will not allow them to generate the data in PDF format. So the only way they could do it is to give it to us in hard copy. And we said, okay. So eventually, they printed for us thousands and thousands of pages of data. In our own view, it was a way of frustrating us and to say, look, how can they handle thousands of pages, if not up to, I can say that it would have been up to about 10,000 pages of printed documents. But we also said, well, since we need a thing, we will take our time and analyze it. So we had to type out the entire material so that we can then begin the analysis. And that's how come it took us from 2021 all the way to now to be able to produce the story. So after it was typed out, the analysis, the aggregations were done, were established, which were the foreign scholarships, which were the local scholarships, who got what, to what university, is there any connection of those beneficiaries to the political class? Are there people who got double scholarships? Are there people who got monies for courses that could have been done here easily? And in fact, in some instances, we came to the conclusion that some awards to particular individuals could have sponsored about 60 students to do the same course here in Ghana. So one person takes money that could have paid for the full course of 60 students in Ghana for the same program. Not a different program, for the same program. So if it is BS marketing or MA marketing, if you look at how much is being paid to that individual, it could sponsor about 60 students here in Ghana. So that's how the story evolved, and that's how we've gotten to where we are. And as has been said, from next week, we'll be putting out the entire data so that Ghanaians will know who benefited. It's not everybody that we know, but once we put it out there, already some people are beginning to say, oh yes, I got a scholarship for UK, but I never got the one that they said I got for US. So people are beginning to come out, and I'm sure eventually we'll get a situation where people's names are there, but they never got the money or they never got to benefit from the scholarship.
Okay, all right, we have also been inundated by messages and emails by people who say they are Ghanaians who live abroad and have had issues with the scholarship secretariat, among others. We will see how we can share a couple of those verified messages with our viewers. But I want you to hold on. You say what prompted this investigation was the report done by the Auditor General covering 2012-2017, and which was released sometime in 2020, and we all began to discuss it, how people got appalled at how people like Matthew Opoku Prempeh, the Energy Minister, then Education Minister, right? Sarah Adwoa Safo, MP for Dome, and who was also Minister for PPA, and they got the scholarships. One person, Matthew Opoku Prempeh's scholarship alone was said to be able to train as many as 6 MPhil students, but he took that amount of money to go to Harvard for only 3 weeks or so. Adwoa Safo also did almost a similar thing, and people were appalled at it. And they got criticized. And if you remember, Matthew Poku Prempeh actually later said that he does not regret taking the Get Fund scholarship. And he said, I will do it again if the opportunity presents itself. When he appeared before Parliament for vetting. Yao Daniel Domelevo, who did that audit and got vilified by persons within the MPP for it, has been speaking to me. Let's listen to him briefly, whether he feels that some lessons have been learnt after that audit process, before I come to engage all of you again. So we are privileged to have the benefit of the knowledge to be shared with us by the former Auditor General, Daniel Yao Domelevo. And he, if you recall, supervised the audits that in 2020 revealed the unthinkable. Mr. Domelevo, thank you so very much once again for your time. Looking at the revelations from the Fourth Estate publication, I suppose that you will not be surprised. Your audit at the time found how people who were well-to-do and had no need at all, like Dr. Matthew Poku Prempeh, Adwoa Safo, all received hefty scholarship to go and pursue courses in Harvard. At the time when we put together Matthew Poku Prempeh, what he received alone could take care of MPhil students, as many as 6 students, to undertake an MPhil to assist this country. And yet he alone received that money for a conference or for a study for only 2 weeks in Harvard. What do you say about the revelations you are seeing now?
Thank you very much, Samson. I am not surprised at all about the revelation, because I have said time and again that when you have a system or a country in which there are no consequences for misbehavior or wrongdoing, it becomes the norm and people do it with impunity. So it doesn't come to me as a surprise at all that the behavior or that practice is still ongoing. And but the only part which shocked me a bit is that those who are responsible for that, they are not shameful at all. It doesn't occur to them that there is anything wrong, including the administrator of the scholarship secretariat. Is telling us that I listened to an interview on Joy FM or radio, I think TV, and where I saw him saying that, well, there is no legal framework. That is why he thinks the discretion is being exercised that way. And I say, I beg to differ. Even if there is no legal framework, being the administrator and the position you've held for almost 7 years, shouldn't you come out with some policies which can guide to ensure that you don't take capricious decisions and you are not arbitrary in the discharge of your duties? I couldn't wrap my head, I guess, around it.
Right.
So that is where we are.
Right. So in fact, in that audit, you were assured that they were going to take steps to correct the wrongs that had been identified by your auditors at the time, including the wrong that over 3,000 applicants, only 12 of that number submitted complete documents. You had a sort of a relief at the time, and you gave them a benefit of the doubt when they promised and assured you that they were now going to put in place the guidelines and the policies for the award of the scholarship.
Yes, Samson, that is true, because I thought maybe it never occurred to them that they need to come out with policies or guidelines in order to be objective and ensure that they are serving the public interest instead of other interests. So one would have expected that from 2020 to today, now they will have come out with policies and guidelines so to help people. Anyway, I'm happy to hear that the administration of that scholarship has moved from Gate Fund to the scholarship secretariat, that by itself is good, because that is what the law requires.
Right.
But if the scholarship secretariat has not been able to do better than Gate Fund, then it is regrettable, because I thought that is their preoccupation 24/7. So if all that you do is to administer scholarship, you don't just wake up every day and say, let's give it to Mr. Tall, Mr. Short, Mr. Fat, so and so. No, you must have criteria, and that criteria must be published or made known to everybody. Said that, and even I don't think they can even sit in the comfort of their office and come out with such a policy or a criteria. They need to do a bit of consultation to get different stakeholders' input, so that they come out with a policy which will serve the interests of the country. But if it is still not there, then let me say it's very regrettable.
Right. You had also flagged the breach of the law at the time. Section 2, subsection 2 of the Get Fund law.
Subsection 2B.
Yes, correct. Thank you very much. That these scholarships were to be for gifted but needy students. And they were supposed to be for the sponsorship of local sponsorships, not foreign. At the time, your audit had found that out of the over 3,000 applicants, you had only about 800 that were local sponsorship. This revelation, again by the Fourth Estate, shows that no steps have been taken to correct this.
Yes, and if you remember, my critics during those days came out with some flimsy excuse that those scholarships were granted under E instead of B, the section 2B.
Right.
They said it was granted under the E, which says that the minister together with the board can also use part of the Gate Fund to fund other education-related policies or activities. So they shamefully did that. And, well, I'm not a lawyer, you are. I was, to me, it was actually funny, because they've forgotten that the Gate Fund has what they call distribution or allocation formula, which goes to Parliament for approval.
Right.
And in that formula, the E is not there. So I don't know how.
But even granted that anybody wanted to use section 22E, if we grant those making that argument, if we grant them their argument, then you may say it is a window, a small window. You don't turn that window into a gaping door.
The main door, yes, exactly. That is my problem. And to be honest with you, it disturbs me a lot that people abuse scholarships for gifted but needy students this way. But what baffles my mind, honestly, to speak, is that the secretariat allows this to continue. First, I thought when we did the audit, they didn't know. But this has been brought to the fore, and they got to know about it. And I remember the gentleman who, Kingsley Abuaji, also, who was named Dr. Kingsley Abuaji, all those days. He was quite new in the office, so I thought maybe he didn't know about it. So I thought maybe they didn't know. So at least since the audit has revealed some of these things, it was very easy to say, look, now let's see what is expected of us. The law says this. We will do the right thing. And let me be honest with you, Samson. If we have a society in which the highest paid class can classify themselves as the needy, then we are in trouble. And someone I heard on one forum was talking about the salary of the minister, that the minister's salary makes him needy. So let's grant it. A minister takes home about 25,000 and he is needy. Do you know that some of the teachers and the public servants, they don't even take home 5,000?
3,000. 2,000.
Sorry again.
2,000,
okay.
3,000.
Thank you. So if you are taking between 25 to 30,000 a month and you are needy, and so it is you who is supposed to benefit from this fund, then I find it unfortunate. But like the point you raised, the law actually limited the scope or the geographical space in which you can apply what they call it, scholarship. It says to fund second cycle and tertiary education in Ghana.
Correct.
The law is very clear about that. And people are doing courses in Britain, in US, etc. Even the new report that I've seen, some of them have benefited twice. Some 2 times in a year, some after 1 year, the next year they get it again. And I'm like, it's not a surprise. Why would it be a surprise? Because the government or the executive is not minded to take any action when indiscipline of this nature comes to the fore. I thought the president would have called his ministers or his, at least the public servants under his discipline and said, please, refund that money within 24 hours with interest or I fire you. Nothing. So why do you think people will not move in and continue abusing? So that is where we are. I maintain my position.
Coming to know that despite the findings in the audit we are referencing now and all the breaches that occurred and the wastage and the cost to the state at the time, where you could see that because of political pressure, they even had to spend more than they had their budget. They spent 300% more than they had.
Yes.
And still this is going on. In the interim, what do you think ought to be done? Solutions. What should we do?
Solutions, we have to get some minded Ghanaians to challenge this behavior in court, at least to injunct the secretariat from misapplying the public funds. One, I don't know the total money which the secretariat got during this period were all from gate fund. But if portion of the gate fund went into this, then I think there is illegality and we may have to challenge and stop them. And if possible, we should seek a way of recovering this money from the beneficiaries or punishing whoever is creating this opportunity. I think this finding of the fourth estate should not be let go just like the auditor.
When you talk about recoveries, are you thinking about perhaps a special investigative committee going into this, or you are simply looking at the resort to surcharges and disallowances when it comes to the auditing process?
First and foremost, if I was in charge of the auditing process, I was going to disallow and surcharge. That one, there's no two ways about that. I was going to do that. But now that I don't have that powers and the Auditor General is independent, I cannot push him and we cannot push him. I think, and this is a legal advice I need, I think if it is possible, we should get a team to go to court against these guys and say, refund the money to the consolidated fund or back into the gate fund or to the scholarship fund, because you are not one of the intended beneficiaries. I don't know if this is an action we can take. If it is possible, then I call upon well-meaning Ghanaians, let's come together and see what we can do to recover these monies.
Will you be ready to be one of the plaintiffs in such a suit?
I would like to. I'll be happy to be the first plaintiff, Samson.
Thank you very much for your time. As always, Mr. Daniel Yao Domelevo is former Auditor General of the Republic of Ghana. And during his era, they conducted an extensive audit that revealed, perhaps for the very first time, how the scholarships are abused.
A person has to be a needy person, this. So I asked, how do you sit in Accra and determine who a needy person is? Who a needy person is, where the person resides, let's say, up north or far east. Do you use voodooism? And I realized that it was more based on experience than a more rigorous system. So I began developing a decentralization process. So I know you might have heard. I was the first to introduce the scholarship decentralization application or selection system.
I think that is a most unfortunate way to describe who deserves a scholarship. Because we know that we live in a society where some have and some don't have. So we speak about the haves and the have-nots. And in every society, it is always the collective thinking that opportunities be provided for those who don't have to also be able to survive, thrive, and contribute their quota. And so scholarships should be targeted at them.
People who are beneficiaries of those scholarships.
How? Can you show me that? If the person has completed, there's a need for further, and we can award.
Where you are giving double scholarship, I don't think the law allows us to receive double pay or double salary. The Auditor General will not allow that. Similarly, you cannot receive double scholarship. And again, it boils down to priority. I mean, to what extent are these people, whatever scholarship we are giving for this double scholarship or double programs, going to bring or add to the Ghanaian economy?
Right. So, Suleimana Isifu, I'll come to you briefly. Suleimana Brahima, are you still there? We just saw Suleimana Brahima. Suleimana Brahima comes back in just some 2 minutes, give us the highlights of the documentary, what they feel or they find to be wrong with the process. The Scholarship Secretariat's officer here will answer these questions. But Suleimana Isifu, you, a couple of years ago, or when was it that you wrote this article about it, and I've been reading it. Yes, that was January of this month. But last year, we were doing an interview with you and you mentioned this issue as well. What do you know about the process that you think is wrong?
Thank you, Samson, and greetings to your cherished viewers and listeners. So I would like to start off by commending commending Fourth Estate for giving us or providing us a basis to discuss the Scholarship Secretariat. And I would also like to announce to Domelevo that I'm willing to join his suit as one of the plaintiffs, because I think that the Scholarship Secretariat receives enormous resources. Recently, I was just trying to compare their budget with a critical state institution like Maslock. So while Maslock had been budgeted with 71 million Ghana cedis, there was a budget of over 300 million for the Scholarship Secretariat. So it bears questioning how Ghana is benefiting from such enormous commitment to the Scholarship Secretariat. Yes, so I have been on this crusade against the Scholarship Secretariat because of what I know firsthand. And Samson, you know that by virtue of my research travels across Europe, I've met a couple and a number of many students in many conferences and many academic fora. And they tell me stories that, for example, I go to France for a conference and I meet a Ghanaian student who tells me his experience with Scholarship Secretariat. And then I go to Belgium for a conference and a Ghanaian also tells me a story that is similar to what the person in France told me. I go to the UK and I meet dozens of students who are telling me their experiences with Scholarship Secretariat. The same thing in Germany, you meet students and they tell you stories about Scholarship Secretariat. And all these stories, when you tally them, you see a semblance or you see a trend that makes it impossible for you to ignore the stark reality or probability that these stories are probably true by virtue of the preponderances and the corroborative nature of the kinds of stories that you hear from these students. Samson, I have heard students, for example, tell me that they pay huge sums of money, and some have told me they paid as much as £5,000 in order to get a scholarship of, say, £40,000. I have heard students tell me that they pay sometimes just 30,000 Ghana cedis just to get a letter to prove that Scholarship Secretariat is willing to give them a scholarship. So in essence, they are not buying the scholarship, they are just buying what we call an offer letter from the Scholarship Secretariat. And this offer letter, they see it as a guarantee of they gaining visa. So then the question of visa racketeering also sets in. So when I hear people say that Fourth Estate has just come up with people who have received scholarships and that there's nothing wrong with it, what I'm saying is that scholarships, Fourth Estate has only provided us an avenue to look deeply into matters that are gangrening or matters that are rotten as far as the Scholarship Secretariat is concerned. Samson, I'll tell you a story, a very grim story of a student who Scholarship Secretariat transferred 8,000 euros to the person. And the Scholarship Secretariat apparently has intermediaries who normally, so on record in Ghana, the student has received 8,000 euros. But then the Scholarship Secretariat, using a corrupt intermediary, will come back door and take the money back and give you a percentage out of that.
Seriously?
So let's say they transfer. Yes, this is stories that I've seen. And in fact, I have seen evidence of somebody whose bank account was closed down because when the Scholarship Secretariat sent the intermediary to take the money, the person went to withdraw the money at a go in an European bank. I don't want to mention the country for fear of they victimizing the students in these countries. So when he went to withdraw the money, all of it from the bank, it triggered an alert within the banking system. How can somebody come in? Because in Germany, for example, you're allowed to withdraw 2,000 euros at a go. So when they saw such withdrawals happening within a short space of time, it triggered an alert within the banking system. They wrote a letter to this person and closed down his bank account. I have seen the letter with my own eye. The person's bank account was closed. Why? Because when Scholarship Secretariat transferred the money, the person went to withdraw the money and gave 6,000 euros out of what was transferred to the corrupt agent who was fronting this whole thing for the Scholarship Secretariat. So when we talk about the Scholarship Secretariat, the problems associated with the Scholarship Secretariat are enormous. There is a problem of nepotism. I have seen people who have PhDs and have still been offered scholarship by Scholarship Secretariat to go and do PhD again. So at this point, you ask yourself, while there are many young Ghanaians who are struggling to even obtain a first degree just because they don't have money, others have the luxury of doing a second PhD or a second master's, all under monies provided by our taxes. So when you hear stories or the kind of justifications that come out from the Scholarship Secretariat, it makes me want to throw up because it tells me the people who are manning the Scholarship Secretariat have no conscience at all. To say that they are Ghanaians or these people who have been given are Ghanaians and so they are deserving, that is not an excuse enough. In every reasonable society, you provide what we call a safety net for the weak. And that is why it is commendable that His Excellency Nanado brought the free SHS. So it provides safety net for the poor. But upwards of from the free SHS or upwards from HHS, there are many students who are confronted with enormous challenges in terms of progression. And some of us receive a lot of requests from these students. And when I see these requests and I compare it with the stories that I know about the Scholarship Secretariat, I become very sad and very annoyed as a Ghanaian. Samson, there are stories where Ghanaians have been sponsored to go and study, for example, in the UK. And then, under normal circumstances, when you are sponsored with, state funds, you are expected to come back and assist the state in one way or another. Do you know that there are, for example, students who, after completion, because the government that has issued you the visa knows that you were sponsored by your government, you are requested to go back. They will request what they call a letter of consent from your Scholarship Secretariat in case you want to continue your stay in that particular country. Now, there are some graduates who are paying £3,000 to the Scholarship Secretariat to get what they call the letter of consent. And do you know what they do in the UK and other countries? They become janitors. they begin to serve in the old age homes after being sponsored with thousands of pounds of Ghanaian hard, cold cash. They become janitors, and in order to get the letters of consent, some of them told me personally that they paid upwards of £3,000 to get a letter of consent in order to get what they call a graduate visa job seeking business in those countries, and then they become janitors in those countries. So this is what our taxes are being used for.
Scary.
And then somebody sits at the scholarship secretariat and tries to justify this. I wonder if such people have conscience at all.
Hold on there for me. And Suleimana, I need you in 2 minutes. Suleimana Brahima. Okay, I understand we have lost him. I was going to ask him the question. Maybe Dr. Clement Park, you would take that in just a couple of minutes, and I come to the Scholarship Secretariat to answer the many questions that are coming up. You take thousands of scholarships, and then you go and look for a couple, tens, maybe even if it's 100, who are connected to politicians. Freddie Blaze's daughter, then Oforia Tai's, relative, then all those other people. Is that fair? Because there will be thousands others who got it without being connected. Is that not correct?
Well, Samson, let me express my appreciation to you and to the Fourth Estate for bringing us this far as government scholarships are concerned. It is important to state that while the Scholarship Secretariat is expected to deal with matters to do with education, and I believe funding the education of Ghanaians who are brilliant but needy, the Scholarship Secretariat is not under the auspices of the Ministry of Education. So the Education Committee of Parliament has no jurisdiction over its activities. It is housed under the office of the President. Having said so, I have taken a personal interest in this matter, also because over the years, I've received several complaints about how brilliant but needy students have applied and have been denied the scholarship. And all the narrative so far confirms what I've also known. But to your question, I don't believe it is unfair. I don't believe it is unfair because as a society, we ought to make it a priority to provide avenues for the less fortunate to be able to rise, thrive, and contribute. If not for greed, selfishness, cronyism, blatant corruption, and abuse of office and political power, how can anyone justify a situation where the son of a farmer in Fumbisi, who earns less than 500 Ghana cedis per annum, should be denied a scholarship in favor of a sitting minister of state? So regardless of how you cut, spice, and dice it, it is simply wrong. And that is why I've argued that in all of this, we ought to be looking at a legislative framework that should regulate and define and establish who, how scholarships are awarded. And until we do that, and also extricate the Scholarship Secretariat from the direct control of the executive, from the office of the President, I am sorry to say that we are talking about, we are not going to see any change.
Okay, now hold on there for me. And I come to Richard in the studio here. Now, Richard, when you look at this investigative piece, really, it's your reports, your documentations that you have handed them, and they have taken the time to go through, and they found out how party executives, I'm talking about MPP party executives, in good number are getting all these scholarships. How do you justify that? How do you justify why they highlight a number of people? Freddie Blair's daughter, he's GMPC chairman, he's whatever of the MPP, he's been where to Parliament, the wife is an ambassador. I mean, they ask the question, from where they sit, why should that person be entitled when someone else, who is poor, cannot be entitled? How do you justify these things?
Thank you, Samson, and a very good morning to your cherished listeners and viewers. I must commend the Fourth Estate because for a good work done in some aspects. But before I get into your question, there are some misconceptions, and I think it is good that Fourth Estate has actually brought this out because it will enhance the education that we need. Because per the investigation or the interviews that you've had, clearly it appears that panelists are confusing Get Fund with Ghana Scholarship Secretariat. I am here today to represent the Ghana Scholarship Secretariat. And your interview with the past Auditor General referencing Dr. Matthew Puku Prempe and Adjoa Safo and what have you, were awards given by the Get Fund.
Yeah, he didn't confuse that. He was clear about that.
And not Ghana Scholarship.
He was clear about that. The point there was that Get Fund had usurped the Scholarship Secretariat's role. So in that audit, they actually advised and recommended that Get Fund should stop and leave you alone to do the job. But you should also have policies, guidelines for how you do it.
So that is why, and you rightly quoted the Get Fund Act, Section 22B. So from time to time, Get Fund is mandated to give us supplementary funds. And it is clear that that particular fund coming from Get Fund is supposed to go into the second cycle accredited tertiary institutions for local consumption. Now, Samson, I will indulge you that as to whether we are constantly receiving that fund from Get Fund and whether it is adequate enough to sponsor every local scholarship in Ghana, I'll leave that to you. You are the journalist. But the point is that if your other colleague or your other panelist has evidence about these serious crimes that he has professed, I think it is only clear that you do not have to wait for this opportunity to come out. We will assist so that we bring the perpetrators to justice.
When we are done, we may have a discussion.
Yes.
And for good reasons, purposes of avoiding victimization of certain people, I've received emails directly to my email. As we speak now, I am receiving WhatsApp messages from students who are beneficiaries who are abroad.
Yeah.
Of course, a good number of them talking the positive.
Yeah.
My phone number is not public.
Yeah.
How they got it, and suddenly all of them are flooding my phone with it. I've been in this job for a while. I know how this would happen. But there are people, not faceless people, who are talking about the racketeering, who are talking about the unfair treatment. I put up the Reginald. He came for an aptitude test. He got 93%. Reginald is a brilliant guy with the pharmacy subsector of our economy, doing a lot of work. He didn't get it.
So it is important that we get to know the processes. Samson, getting 100% in the aptitude test is 25% of the procedure. It will also be fair for educational purposes that we get the background, because as it stands now, all the armory in Ghana and the media, Fourth Estate and multimedia, towards the scholarship secretariat. And as I jokingly stated, that it appears that we are guilty before we were charged. Headed to 2017. How was scholarship secretariat being awarding scholarships? Between 2012 and between 2009 to 2016, how were we awarding scholarship? You will sit in Accra and let people from, I did a bit of investigation. I don't know whether you are from Upper East Bongo or something. I got names from this current administration. We have all awarded scholarship to these guys, and we will talk about that later. But then the scholarship secretariat will sit in Accra, and people will travel all the way from Upper East to come and prove to the scholarship secretariat that, in fact, they are brilliant and needy. Now, this particular government and this young, hard-working Dr. Kingsley Agyeman come into office and says it is not fair. How are we going to make this fair so that the right, needy, brilliant people get the scholarship? And this is what we did, Samson. The decentralization is not good enough. However, what we did was that we will get the people who live in the locality, who are the best people to determine that these particular students are brilliant and they deserve the awards. So this is the criteria for the committee. We then have a traditional rep from that district to be part of the scholarship review committee. We then have an MP or his rep, irrespective of party colors. We have the current DCE or the MCE to be part of this scholarship review committee. Then we have the educational district rep, and then a staff from scholarship secretariat. So you do the aptitude test. We shortlist the aptitude test based on the median score. We invite those who are scaled through for interview. For the interviews, you are marked on these criteria. Your academic merit, depending on the grade that you go, we give you a mark. The motivation to pursue a particular course, your comprehension and general knowledge. So after this interview, the panel grades and recommend that these particular students are in need of scholarship. And this is what we've done since 2017. So if you look at the record, and that is why, although I commend Fourth Estate, it comes back to your question, that the period between 2019 to 2020, Samson, this government had awarded 61,500 local scholarships. In that same year, for foreign awards, we had awarded 2,911 scholarships for foreign awards. And I don't know whether we do have the time. I would have explained to you that even for foreign scholarships, there are two different types. We have the bilaterals and the non-bilaterals. So let's focus on the foreign awards that we awarded. So if you pick 3,000 of the foreign awards that we awarded, and you cherry pick those who are politically or the elite inclined. I did the calculation yesterday. I know, and it was about 0.5% of the data set. I am not a statistician. I am an engineer and a health worker before I got to the scholarship secretariat. But I've watched you for years, Samson. If after this program we run a random sampling test on your credibility on this work, and then you get to find out that half a person out of 100 is not satisfied with your job, does it mean that you are worse at your job? Yes, we are a human institution, and it is very important that these outliers do happen. But I will indulge our viewers that we will take a critical look into these things, because the caveat for
what you refer to as outliers, caveat, hold on there. So some of the scholarships, those who beneficiaries who got, that is raising eyebrows. Just let's look at just a couple of them.
Yes.
And then you'll explain why they would be qualified. And we're showing them now, one after the other.
Yes. I am
so
particularly
this one.
Yes.
go back to the first one that just came. She got it for internship.
Yes.
She got it for internship in the International Criminal Court. People are asking internship, scholarship of 6,000 USD or how much for is, and then so the rest of them, you will see that this is a high-rank diplomat, and is getting this much. Why a diplomat? Why should he be qualified? The next person also a diplomat or so. The next person an MPP youth activist, 27, thousand US dollars. The next person Ashanti Regional Youth Organizer, 5,000. The next person, this also high-rank diplomat, gets this amount. The next person, 17,000 MPP youth activists. The next person, 28,000.
This is actually
Ashanti Regional Communication.
For Frey. It's inaccurate. He did not get scholarship from us.
His name is in there. Then we keep showing you. Let them roll as you answer the question.
So
how do you explain that they are able to find, dozens of people who are MPP executives and who are people who are also high-rank officials and people who are connected to MPP executives and high-rank government politicians?
Yes, I think we should not get into, as I explained, over 3,000 awards have been given, and you've cherry-picked less than 20. I've done the maths. But if we are going to be fair, and which Brahima said here is going to be published, as I sit here, I can guarantee you that across the spheres, even multimedia here, we've awarded scholarships and trainings to some of your staff. Does it mean that they are rich and they do not need the scholarship? Let me read the mission of the Ghana Scholarship Secretariat to you for our viewers to be clear. The Ghana Scholarship Secretariat exists to utilize Government of Ghana funds, get fund, donor funds and other funds for the provision of scholarship to brilliant students and qualified Ghanaians at a minimum access cost for human resource development and national growth. And so it does not specify that we are supposed to give
to needy.
No, the needy bit is technical because we are getting supplementary funding from Get Fund. And you look at the Get Fund law, section 22B, it clearly stipulates that that money that we are getting from Get Fund should go to local scholarships.
Yes, that apart.
And they have made
that
it clear that their funding is for local scholarship.
Good.
And for the award.
So you say it doesn't matter a person's affluence, they can still get it.
So, and that is why Dr. Kingsley Agyeman, since 1960, we've established this Ghana Scholarship Secretariat. This is why he is the only registrar since 1960 has been advocating for a legislation to give us an enabling act. So it is important that we have this national discourse without emotions and passion. Because if we do that, then we will know that if you are a public sector worker, you do not qualify. If you are MP, minister, journalist of your stature, you do not qualify. Neither do your relative qualify.
They bring out. I will not be asking for any. I'm not Opoku Prempeh who says if he gets it today, he will take it again. Okay, I do not need his wealth.
I'm saying your relative might need it.
So you hold on. So now I'm saying that, how do you defend to anybody, for example, that somebody of the stature of somebody they refer to in the vice president's office, the wife's office, he got whatever and never even attended, and yet X amount, is it 50-something, was paid?
So in a more lighter note, if we really want to be fair, that particular incident, I am quite surprised that they actually linked it to the second lady. Because if the particular person in question is related to the second lady, he is also related to the MP of Adenta. Okay. So why is the focus on the second lady? We should be clear. And what justification can we give that because I am related to a rich man, then that means that I am rich.
Okay.
So there is the need for this legislation to make sure that what we are doing is in tandem with the act that will guide our awards of scholarship. So if you go onto our website, it clearly defines that we are also allowed to give awards to qualified workers at minimum access for human resource development for the purpose of national growth. And so if a worker from multimedia find a short...
So, for example, you have a number of people you have given to go train as lawyers.
Yes.
Okay, and one of those they flag is the daughter of Freddie Blay.
Yeah.
Now, are you saying there's a purpose, a national service purpose for that kind of award? That the person will bring service to the country, or that there's a certain kind of law that the person was sponsored to study, that we don't have the human resource, then they will bring it to help the country. Is that it?
Yes, I believe that, for example, the first lady that you showed that had that internship to go to ICC, legally it's not wrong. Morally, I've been thinking about it. And what are the odds that you will find a Ghanaian, you are a lawyer, I'm an engineer and a health worker, what are the odds that a young Ghanaian girl will have the opportunity to have internship in one of the highest courts in the world, ICC? You see, if
people who already have a good paying job wherever they are in the UK or in the US, and they are still accessing your fund.
Then again, that is why I am really, really happy to be here, because this will open the gateway for a legislation act. Because how is the secretariat going to assess that you have enough money to pay? Now, the only criteria for award of scholarship secretariat, and we shouldn't confuse Get Fund with scholarship secretariat, is that you must be, number one, a Ghanaian and have an admission. And so if you are a Ghanaian...
So, Richard, this is what I'm going to do.
Yes.
We will ask you to commit, so we bring you back.
Thank you.
Then we commit some time
Yes.
to explain properly,
yes,
as they continue to churn out more of these stories in the course of the week.
It is very important.
So we have a commitment. We'll have you next week. We'll continue this discussion. Our time is up.
That's all right.
Okay. Thank you very much. Richard Jemfi is Director for International Relations and Partnerships at the Ghana Scholarship Secretariat. And this is where we have to, as it were, curtail the discussion because our time is up. Thank you, Suleimana Isifu. We should make contact with you, and so we can join to have a decent discussion, looking forward to the solutions going forward and how the Scholarship Secretariat must work. I'm Samson, Lardy, Anyenini. Have a good afternoon.